order, but the girl has been returned to her family. Randy Green, 29, is accused of taking Renaya Green from her grandmother's house on Tuesday. A restraining order requires Green to stay away from the baby and the mother, Ernestine Brass. While the toddler is safe, Green is still being sought. He is black, 29 years of age, about 5'8", 145 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He's believed to be driving a 2004 black BMW X5 with a license plate number 7GYU146. Anonymous tips can be left at 800-222-8477. Again, that license plate number 7GYU146. And for anonymous tips, 1-800-222-8477. Inland Empire weather. Showers expected for tomorrow. Highs near 59, lows near 49 tonight. And right now we're at about 59 here in San Bernardino. I'm Di Rice on KCAA. This report has been brought to you by Unbound. Mothers around the world have the power to lift their families out of poverty. They just need a little help. Make a difference in the life of a family today at unbound.org.
West Coast Auto of Montclair is the 2015 top-rated pre-owned dealer in California, offering a service department that surpasses expectations in every single way. And while you're there, browse West Coast Auto's extensive lot of best-in-class pre-owned vehicles.
You're getting the best-in-class vehicles with financing options like 0% down and no payments for 90 days. Visit westcoastauto.com or call 9099-million.
KCAA Loma Linda, your CNBC news station for the Inland Empire.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Tom Ladd. For this afternoon, it'll be mostly cloudy, high near 61 with a southwest wind at 5 to 10. Chance of showers, possibly a thunderstorm tonight. Then showers likely and thunderstorms after 11 p.m. Mostly cloudy with a low around 49. Even chance for rain Friday, possibly a thunderstorm. Cloudy with the high near 58 degrees. And Friday night, slight chance for showers before 11 p.m. Mostly cloudy and a low around 50. That's your weather forecast for this hour from the station that leaves no listener behind. NBC News Radio, AM 1050 KCAA.
Welcome to Smart Health Talk with your host, Elaine McFadden.
Take a walk on the wild side.
Welcome to Smart Health Talk radio show with your host, me, Elaine McFadden. And I am thrilled to be here. Let me tell you, getting a chance to come out here and talk to everybody about things that interest me because I'm a dietitian and I have a master's in public health. And I did all that because I wanted to make a difference in the population's health as a group. And being able to have this radio show and reach out to you gives me a chance to reach a lot of people at one time, because the topics that we talk about have to do with impacting everyone, actually. I mean, if you eat, and you're drinking, and, if you want to live in a nice, clean environment, free of poisons and cancer-causing type elements, then you're at the right place, and you better not leave. Please don't touch that dial. Stay for our whole show because we have an incredible guest for you today. I'm very excited. He's calling in from Washington, D.C. Took time where it's like 7 o'clock his time, but he's passionate about this subject and all the work that they do over at the peer group, which this is an incredible group. It's the Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. And that first word, public, that tells you right there that this group is looking out for all of us. And I am so grateful for groups like this because so many of us, we're just busy just trying to get through our own lives and surviving from day to day to focus on going after the injustices that are being done at the government level that impact the health of everyone. in this country, really, because we're talking about the safety of the food we eat, the long-term ability of our fields to produce food at a rate that will enable them to be sold at a price that we can afford. I mean, if all your fields are only, if they're underproducing, then that means we're going to have less food and the price is going to go up. So we have to learn how to deal with the fact that we have this increasing population. There's more and more people to feed, less and less resources, and that means that we need to buckle down and we need to start taking responsibility for everything that we're doing and all the choices that we're making with how we spend our dollars. And because these dollars are actually a vote, and you're giving your dollars to different corporations. And those corporations are then choosing to use your dollars how they choose to do it. So if we start understanding how these corporations are using our dollars, and if they're doing it in ways that don't make us feel too good and make us, kind of think, hey, I would never choose to spend my money like that, then maybe we shouldn't be giving our dollars to those corporations. And that is our freedom. We don't have to do that. And we need to stop blaming maybe other people and start taking some responsibility ourselves, because we're the ones giving the people, these corporations, our dollars. And then they're taking and they can use them against us. They can use them to destroy the environment. And they can use it to farm in a way that is not sustainable and is not going to leave the ground better than we found it. So that means in the future we're going to be in trouble. Okay? Sorry. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But you know what? We can change this. That's the great thing. There is hope. And there are answers out there and solutions that if we all buy into it and all pitch in and make those choices, we can change this world and we can change our country to be better than ever. And I want to see Americans strong. I don't want to see people weak and sick. I want Americans to be strong and smart, and I want to see our country get ahead. And we can't do that if we have these huge burdens of multi-billion-dollar costs related to healthcare that can be prevented. So I'm asking you guys, just please, first of all, be smart. Health shoppers, that you're tuning into the show, and that's what happens. You start, just getting more and more aware of what's going on around you. People are not taking advantage of you. And I tell you, that's a really good feeling at the end of the day. Because when you start, getting educated and you're just all of a sudden this awareness happens, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize what was going on here. And I want to ask Joe, our engineer here, is our guest on the line? He is? Okay. Our guest, Jack Rook, everybody. He's on the line, and I want to go ahead and welcome him to Smart Health Talk, and let's get into it, because if any of you have wondered if our government is really looking out for us, and if the people that are in the position of places like the USDA and the FDA that are making big time decisions on the safety of our food, if they are making decisions with integrity and without bias, and maybe you think, oh, maybe they're not doing that. Well, we're going to have the answers for you today on what's really going on with these agencies and some major action that this group, the peer group, has taken. And Jack Rook is the director of that and heading all this up. And not just that, this group is doing so many incredible things. And I can't wait to tell you about some of the other things that they're doing related to wildlife. And so we're going to have a great discussion, and I hope that you're going to stay for the whole hour here, because this is what we're going to be getting into, and this affects all of us. So please stay tuned. And I want to welcome Jack Rook to our show. Hey, Jack.
It's Jeff, but hi.
Oh, Jeff. Why did I come up with Jack?
That's a day word.
It's Jeffrey. It's Jeffrey Rook, everyone, and he's the director of the peer group, which is Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. Now, what does that mean to you guys over there when the name of your organization? What are you trying to say with that name?
Well, first of all, it creates a mercifully pronounceable acronym.
Yeah. All right. Peer. Yeah, that works good.
But it also has the double meaning in that a lot of times inside the agency, staff is treated like a lower level life form. It's almost like staff is spelled with a PH. We're trying to tell people that they're actually equals and they have a seat at the table where decisions are made. And also through them, we look into things. We're a service organization for employees. We provide whistleblower protection and a whole range of other services, and operate sort of as a shelter for battered staff. And we work in agencies like the Fish and Wildlife Service, EPA, the Forest Service, as well as we have a chapter here in California that works in state agencies. We have chapters around the country, and the whole idea is that when civil servants aren't able to serve the public on the job, we help them do it as a hobby.
Well, I can imagine the emotional state that some of the people that you have dealt with in the past, it must be kind of upsetting when you're working in a job and you become aware of some practices that are obviously wrong, and you want to do something about it, and you're afraid for your job and taking care of your family. And I mean, I'm sure there are like, all these different things going through your head, and of course fear.
Well, what's scary is that what a lot of people do is when they find something wrong, their inclination, particularly if they're the subject matter expert, is to elevate it, saying, well, if I just get this high enough up the chain of command, they'll see that I'm right. And they then reach the realization, once they've gone to the highest levels of the agency, and that the reason that it's wrong is because they want it to be wrong, and that you now have become institutionally inconvenient. That's when you have a moment of kind of crisis where you realize that your conscience and your career can't coexist, and that's the moment when people call us.
Well, I am grateful for your agency. I see there is an incredible need, and one of the things that we've reported on, both on our Smart Health Talk social media and this show, are the fact that there's an alarming thing happening in this country with ag-gag laws that are being passed that are pretty much making whistleblowers almost like criminals.
Well, even worse in our view is that the scientists inside these agencies are being gagged by their own chain of command when they are raising matters that are not supporting a preset policy agenda.
Oh, we're getting down. Yeah. So we're not just talking about employees. We're talking about scientists now. And, when I think about scientists, especially when we're talking about the scientists involved with our government agencies, I mean, these decisions that they're making over there are potentially impacting millions and millions of people. Isn't that true?
Sure. But for government scientists, they're particularly have weak legal protections. So, thanks to the Roberts Supreme Court, government employees of all kinds at all levels have no First Amendment rights, zero First Amendment rights on the job. They have no constitutional protection because the court reasoned government owns your speech. And most of these scientists aren't disclosing a violation of law or gross waste and mismanagement or imminent danger. They're not whistleblowers. They're just doing their job, and their findings, the subject of what they're doing, is making people nervous. And those kind of situations are difficult to deal with because in many instances you've got scientists that have been doing the same type of work for years and sometimes decades. And one day they wake up and realize that they've gone from golden boy to public enemy number one inside their own agency, and they didn't do anything differently.
Wow.
Because they weren't watching the political winds behind them, because most of these scientists aren't politicians and don't want to be politicians, which is why they're scientists. And then what adds to it is that scientific careers are especially vulnerable. So you need your agency's permission before you submit a paper for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. If the agency turns it down, you have little recourse. A scientist in many of these fields who doesn't publish for a period of 1, 2, or 3 years might as well have been in a professional coma. But at the same time, in the civil service world, They don't even consider the denial of permission to publish or to make a presentation at a professional society conference. They don't even view it as a personnel action. And so the scientists have little by way of legal rights and great legal vulnerability, and the public policy stakes for what they're doing is often huge. And when that happens, there's pressure down the chain of command, and we help them, if we can, fight back.
So give us, I'm trying to, kind of bring this down to like a simple level that anyone can understand within their own job. Because, all of us have probably been in some uncomfortable situations. I know I certainly have, working for the government.
Sure. For example, you suddenly find yourself, let's say you're a lab director. Suddenly there's an investigation of all the finances in your lab, and they're trying to find any kind of little discrepancy, and with that discrepancy, you're going to be charged with something that will result in an unpaid suspension, the first step on a path to termination.
And so
they're
after you. They're
after you.
They're purposely after you. Okay,
the morale of your lab is in the pits, and they're making it clear that they will not stop at firing you unless you back off, you retract research, you change findings, you water down things, and that's the reality that's going on inside the Agricultural Research Service, which is the science arm of USDA, on a whole range of topics that are of a special concern to agribusiness.
Okay, so you're saying, this is going on.
Right.
we know this is going on because you have talked to people from within that agency that have come to you, and that's how come you know that.
Yes, and there's other evidence of it, but we're not at liberty to go into details. Instead, what we've done is we've gone to the agency, and the agency has a scientific integrity policy. President Obama, early in his first term, ordered all the agencies to develop protections against political manipulation of science and reprisal against the scientists who create them, pledging that they weren't going to be like the Bush administration, where those kind of rewrites were common and brazen. But the USDA policy that finally resulted is so weak, it's got loopholes and gaps, it doesn't have procedures filled in, and it even has its own internal gag order. So, for example, the USDA scientific integrity policy says that scientists may not comment directly or indirectly on any federal policy of any federal agency. That kind of broad gag order gives them the ability to censor any science they find the least bit controversial or even interesting. So those kind of things, so we're formally pushing USDA and threatening if they don't act to sue them, to finally enact the promised policies that are supposed to protect the integrity of the scientific work product and those that create them.
Well, okay, so we've got this agency that's pretty much got control over everything that's being said. This is reminding me a lot of Dr. Tyrone Hayes from Berkeley. His story on his atrazine research, because he researched frogs that were exposed to atrazine, and they actually turned from male frogs into female frogs and were able to reproduce, which is freaky, and it shouldn't be to any male out there, especially since it's sprayed on so many crops. But, when he came with the results, the pesticide company was not too happy with that, and they actually threatened his family. He was one of the scientists that he didn't care what they did to him. He said, "You are not going to control me. You are not going to threaten me. You're not going to threaten my family. I'm going to tell everyone what you're doing to me." And so I thought that was really brave of him, and it really helped kind of bring to light some of the things that these scientists are exposed to, which is something that you guys are dealing with every day. And it's like, what do we do? When something is like this corrupted, when we've had laws passed at the highest level, I guess what you guys are doing, you've taken this legal action. What are you hoping to accomplish?
We're hoping to change the culture and the way these decisions are made. In theory, these scientific integrity policies, if they were fully enacted, would change the way the government works. It's often said that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own set of facts. But the way things work now, the agency leaders can basically rewrite documents to suit their agenda. So they can order inconvenient results to be suppressed. They can order conclusions to be altered, whatever they need to do in order to make sure that the information that's issued supports the agenda. And that's what we're trying to change.
So is there no Freedom of Information Act where any citizens can go and find out what kind of things that they've changed?
We do an awful lot of Freedom of Information Act work, and in many instances it's an alternative to having somebody blow the whistle where they point to documents and we go get them through the front door of the agency. The problem is that in a lot of these instances, reports and studies are kept in draft form, and there's an exemption in FOIA that allows you to hold matters that are still in the deliberative process.
Oh, because it's not final,
right.
So
and our success with FOIA is primarily because we know already what we're looking for. In some instances, we have the leaked version of what we're looking for. We want the agencies to surrender it openly. But if you don't know what you're looking for, the agency can delay and try and reframe what you're looking for, narrow the search so that they won't find what you're looking for. So it becomes fairly inefficient. And we also have the common experience of the FOIA officers going to their agency heads and being told basically lies, that documents that have been requested don't exist.
And what do you do then? You know it exists. So
well, we know it exists, then we can sue with the confidence that we'll win. And we'll get to the point where somebody is going to have to come under oath and say what's happening. And usually by that point, they will have fessed up and disgorged what we're looking for.
So, I mean, how does that feel when have you been in that situation where you had to expose someone for perjury and lying?
Well, one of the odd things about it is that the way things work in these agencies is that managers who commit what are really legal violations rarely get punished, and in some instances get promoted because they're furthering the agenda of the agency.
Oh, good job, Joe. Good job with that line you did in front of Congress or whatever.
In many instances, and that's also why we think these policies are important, because they also provide for discipline of responsible managers in theory. We're trying to turn that theory into practice. But in the meantime, the punishment is what we call the Google legacy. All the documents end up on the World Wide Web. Our website gets an awful lot of traffic because we're constantly displaying these documents that we've plucked out of the agency. And so every time you Google this person's name, these documents will come up, and they'll follow him or her around until they do something else notable.
And so and your website, in case any, we're going to keep repeating this throughout the show, but that's just PEER.org, correct?
PEER.org.
Yeah, PEER.org. So
and you can look at we have a center, a legal help for scientists. There are different campaigns. We have the work broken down by federal agency as well as by state, so you can see what we're doing in your state.
Yeah, we could have people that are listening to this show right now and actually know people that are, going through hell in their job, trying to make a decision on what to do and don't know where to turn. And you would be a great agency to call, especially.
And while we're well aware of the legal rights and options, we often the best work we do, I think, is help employees avoid being put into the situation of being a whistleblower and in a formal battle against their own agency. Because while these rights are important, these cases tend to turn on some personnel question, like were you wrongfully fired or transferred or stripped of your duties. And the battle takes place solely within your personnel jacket and doesn't address the underlying problem for which you were willing to risk your career.
It all goes on the whistleblower instead of the original problem to begin with.
So we try and, where we can, concentrate on delivering the message and not the messenger. And so in this case of USDA, we filed a formal rulemaking petition that didn't name any names, described the composite of a number of cases, made very specific recommendations for things they needed to change now, and no one had to blow the whistle.
Well, the fact that you guys even know what to say and recommend and all that, I think that's really great. I wouldn't even know where to start myself. It's like, how do you clean up this mess? I mean,
we've looked at the policies, and we actually have a breakdown of every policy, every federal policy on the website, a copy of it and a breakdown of it. One of the reasons we think these policies are so potentially important is for the reasons I mentioned earlier, which is scientists have so few legal rights. And the only way that's going to change is if you confer. So right now, absent these policies, the law generally treats scientific information as a matter of opinion. So if it's a matter of opinion, the agency is free to cast the opinion the way they want it. If there's some legal status attached to technical and scientific findings and some safeguards that go to the people that create them, that changes the way government works. It changes the way decisions are made, because the people that are often derided as the pencil pushers can lard the record with inconvenient facts that the policymakers can't ignore. And that's our formula of reform, and that's why we're spending so much time going through the details of every one of these agencies' policies and helping people to use them where we can.
So how do you make sure that your findings are reaching the policymakers?
Well, media is a very important way, and also courts.
Yeah, so, courts, where you guys are right now.
It's a combination of the two. So the reason we're having this conversation is because it's well known, and if you call the USDA Office of Public Affairs, they won't talk to you because they're not authorized to say anything. So that shows they're certainly aware of it. At the moment, they're sort of bunkered down and trying to figure out what to do.
Do you feel that there's like I don't know, it's almost like there's an air of like you're in some sort of a prison type of environment where you're locked into what you can say and do, and so there's like almost a fear within that agency with different employees.
It is analogous, and so the Supreme Court decision I referred to, which came out of Los Angeles, came out of the LADA's office. It was Justice Alito's first swing vote. It had to be re-argued after Sandra Day O'Connell left the court. They're saying that you have no free speech rights if you're a government worker on the job because government owns your speech. And that means that in terms of what you can say, unless it's in the privacy of your own home or completely apart from the job, you can be punished for it. So, for example, in federal service, honesty is not a defense. And we know lots of cases and have helped people where, in essence, they've been punished for being honest at the wrong time.
So
or admitting things that they didn't want admitted, even though it's obvious that it's true. So message control, even though the Obama administration claims that it's the most transparent in history, there's the same level of message control that there was under Bush, even though there are more blogs and Twitter accounts. It's only to give you a clearer view of the accepted talking points.
Well, do you go to the White House and say, I know that you really had these goals in mind, and you haven't accomplished that at all. Instead, it's kind of went this other way. Has anyone went and told them you pretty much failed here?
Actually, if you look at our website, there's a fair amount of that. We have a section called Obama Watch, change we still need. But we haven't been invited into the White House, and as you can imagine, given what we do, we don't get invited out much.
I know, they're all suspicious of you.
We're on no holiday card list.
You know what? I kind of know the feeling. We
don't particularly want access. So it's not like we're trying to make deals with these people.
Yeah, you're not necessarily trying to be friends or anything like that. And and that's the case. You have to have that attitude sometimes, because that's really not going to get you what you want to achieve that. And sometimes these people take advantage too. They'll probably like trick you into thinking that you're getting what you want, but you're not.
Well, and we're also representing individual employees, and we don't want to be in a position where we have to trade them off. We represent them and only them, and we're not there to make friends or have influence. And one of the other frustrations, particularly in the Obama administration, is their management style. There's still that same level of White House control, but there's sort of it's sort of coated with rhetoric of, so these scientific integrity policies are a result of an Obama directive. He has transparency policies and other policies that, in theory, are great. But when you say, well, they're not being implemented, the response has been sort of, well, they didn't read the memo. There's no attempt by the White House to enforce these things, to sort of roll up their sleeves and try and change the way these agencies work. It's a kind of a leadership style we call leadership by inspiration, not perspiration.
Yeah, it's kind of like my big fight with getting junk food out of schools. There was no real enforcement there.
But people will say we're all in favor of good nutrition.
Right. That's what people say.
Right.
But what they're putting out there for the kids is not anything I would feed my kids. And I don't see where aspartame and those kind of things are good for our kids either. It was pretty upsetting for me when I would go to the high school and watch hundreds of kids eating a bag of hot Cheetos and drinking a soda for lunch. And the school food service was okay with that, making money off and compromising the kids' health. Like they didn't really care about that. And it's almost like that's the same kind of attitude that you're experiencing in like these different situations. It's
right,
like,
but I think we discover on a regular basis, and I think you may as well, is that inside these agencies there are people that feel the same way that you do, that are just troubled by the same policies.
That's what I was alluding to earlier, that there are people in there that want to do something, but it's like they're chained and their mouth is zipped up.
If they try and pressure too hard, they risk their jobs and their careers.
So what advice do you have for people out there that are maybe listening to this and know someone or, feel that they're going through that kind of situation in their own job?
Well, you could have them call us. We're at peer.org, and we have we don't charge. We provide free service, and a lot of the work we do, the vast majority of the work we do, we can never talk about because we're really counseling employees. So we're an environmental group, and our key ecosystem, as it were, is the cubicles and hallways and field labs of these agencies. So we want to make sure that they're healthy environments where information can flow in and out, and there's a diversity of opinion that's allowed, and that it's penetrated by sunlight. And so a lot of what we do is we talk people out of blowing the whistle and try and give them strategies like having us file FOIA requests or other things to get the message out without them being the messenger.
So,
and that, in some instances, it allows the matter to be exposed in a way that has no career consequences, and even when it works very well, we've had cases where the person that's the internal whistleblower is put in charge of responding to his own charges.
Yeah,
because
they're
the expert.
Well, what it kind of reminds me of, it's kind of a philosophy that I try to live by too, because sometimes when people get in a position, they've made bad decisions, and maybe in their heart they know that it was a bad decision. They're not really happy. Maybe they were pushed into the situation by like a superior or regulations or whatever, but they really want an out. They don't want to stay there. They want you to give them an opportunity to get out of what they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's almost like you guys come along and you supply that out.
Or we try to. It's not. There's no magic bullet.
Yeah.
But helping them think through their situation and what it is they really want to accomplish, and So, for example, a lot of people have unrealistic expectations about going to Congress and thinking that they're going to trigger a hearing that will result in the problem being solved before the commercial break. And it just doesn't work that way. A lot of times employees report a matter to their member of Congress, and the congressional staff turn the information back over to the agency. And so they're outed and nothing has been accomplished. And sort of symbolic of the way we work is the only product that we sell on our website are boxer shorts, underwear, that say undercover activist in the butt and our logo on the leg, so you can safely wear them to work.
No one will know.
Right, so we're the underwear group, and they come in all shades of white.
That's funny. That shows me you guys have a sense of humor, too.
But it's true. They're under the give button. So.
I know. I mean, it's for real. It worked for Ellen, right? She started her own underwear. So I know you guys, we're talking about, things related to Department of Agriculture, our food, decisions that are being made related to pesticides, GMOs, different chemicals that are used in our food system. But that isn't all you guys do. You actually, have been instrumental in many different causes, and one of your big successes that we can go, we had a big success here. We won. Was related to wildlife refuges. How do you say that? Refuges. Okay, I was wondering if I was getting that word out right. And that was like a really sweet win, I guess, because of, we're talking about some, incredible land and all of the animals that live on the land and all of us that enjoy it.
It took 10 years, but we persuaded the Fish and Wildlife Service to ban genetically modified crops and neonic pesticides from all national wildlife refuges.
Now, wait a minute. People would probably hear that and go, how come you would have to ban, GMOs and pesticides from wildlife refuges?
Well, one of the questions is why they're growing crops on refuges, which for the most part are small islands of land that are for wildlife, usually migratory birds.
And they were growing it. They were growing this stuff there?
Well, they were growing it, and they had been for years, and in many instances the refuges were carved out of farmland, were bought, and in order to keep peace with the local farmers, they let the farmers keep growing crops on uplands and take away, usually the usual cooperative farming agreement allowed the farmer to take away 75% of the crop and leave 25% of the crop on the ground to feed the birds. But over time, for a lot of the crops that are grown on refuges, corn is a good example, is now overwhelmingly genetically modified. And so increasingly the crops grown on refuges were GE crops. And so we sued first in the Northeast and then in the Southeast, and we finally won in the Midwest. And as we were winning the Midwest, the service announced that they learned that they could live without genetically modified crops and these industrial super strong pesticides. So it's a important victory, but the fact that you had to wage this kind of warfare to preserve the biological integrity of what are supposed to be wildlife preserves shows you how low we've sunk.
Yeah, that would even be something that would be going on and you would have to deal with. Now, you said that you would...
It turned out that the reason the Obama administration fought so hard for at least 6 of those years was because they were working with Monsanto to try and eliminate these victories, because Monsanto was complaining that in Europe and in Australia and other places like that, the fact that we were succeeding in getting GE crops banned was an indication why they shouldn't let the crops in. They were saying, if you can't even grow them on your old wildlife preserves, why should we let you grow them here?
Oh, my gosh.
So the White House actually pressured the Fish and Wildlife Service to keep planting, and we actually have all this developed. And the White House...
Shame on you for buying into that Obama administration. That is like
an agricultural biotechnology working group in the White House whose job is to further agricultural biotechnology.
Really? So there's an actual working group, and that is their job. Well, that's nice to know.
And so we sued them to force them to give us records, and we ended up largely succeeding, and they're all displayed on our website. One document they got a federal judge to agree to withhold was a email from a Monsanto lobbyist, which the White House claimed was a trade secret. So we never found out what that trade secret was. But we found it bizarre that high-level, very qualified staffers at places like the White House Council on Environmental Quality were spending their time shoehorning genetically modified soybeans onto wildlife refuges.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really
good
use of time.
That wasn't what we expected from the Obama administration.
That's disappointing. That's extremely disappointing. I hope that we're going to learn from this, and that I'm just so grateful for your work, and that what you guys were able to accomplish. Now, you said that you were successful in the Midwest. Did that mean that policy was then adopted by the other areas across the country?
Well, it actually, genetically modified crops was against the Fish and Wildlife Service policy, but they were not enforcing it. Actually, what they were doing is they were signing waivers that said that the GM crops were necessary to accomplish a refuge purpose, which was just absurd. So we first sued and won in the Northeast region and got the crops banned in 12 states. Then we sued and won in the Southeast region and got them banned in another 8 states, and that was the area where most of the crops were being grown. And then we sued in the Midwest, and that suit just wrapped up. And as we were wrapping up that suit, the Fish and Wildlife Service basically gave up because they were largely defeated and said, we've learned to live without them.
Yeah, that's right. You went up against the peer group, everybody.
But it's sort of a hell of a way to run a railroad. I mean, and also, even though these things are supposed to be refuges for wildlife, all kinds of, they allow oil drilling, mining, hunting, fishing, as well as agriculture. And so in many of these refuges, the wildlife is lucky to get refuge.
Well, yeah, it sounds like there's still a lot more work to be done. I know that one of the things that I had on my list that was had just happened in the news was that McCain has introduced S-750 for public land protection, and pretty much what they want to do is just take over this land that's protected land, eminent domain for government security is what they're saying. This is like national security, that we have to take over this borderland, which has been protected land. So there's, just to have the government come in, we're taking that, it's, that's, I just feel like there should be some sort of other oversight with some of this stuff where, we get more citizens involved.
Well, and one group of citizens we're trying to get involved are the public employees. So we think that in terms of oversight and communicating with the people who are their true employers, that's our job, is to make sure that the things that are going on behind closed doors in these agencies reaches you, because the people that are in the best position to know want you to know.
Yeah. Now that I hear you say that, I totally understand your position, because you're saying, these are the people that really know what is going on, are the public and government employees.
Are just as upset as you are, and often they're the expert, and so they know better than almost anybody why and the consequences of wrong-headed actions are. And so it's an honor and very rewarding to work with these people, because they're really high-class individuals and very smart and know where we should laser target our guns.
It's kind of like you're not really using the experience and knowledge of your employees to better move your agency to a place where it's more of a win-win situation for everyone, and that you're improving, and your agency is becoming a better agency, and you're not utilizing that knowledge that's been and experience that's been learned by your employees.
And going back to USDA, it's basically suppressing and harassing scientists for doing cutting-edge work on what these industrial agricultural methods are doing and their long-term implications.
Well,
so it's very important research, but it's being done at their own peril.
Well, and to repeat what you said earlier, because I thought this was a really important point that you made as far as these scientists, because it's kind of like any kind of health professional like myself. I have to have continuing education credits. You have to keep up, a certain level of, like you said, these scientists have to publish every 3 years or so. So if they're not able to do that, then they're not really able to maintain their profession as a scientist. And instead, these jobs should be making it easy for them to accomplish that, instead of, making it so hard for them and denying them an opportunity to publish, because it goes against, we're over here trying to covet this corporation and hide this information, and you want to go expose it.
Policies are public budgeted by the agency that they won't do any of those things, but they're still doing them. And so we're trying to get them to live up to the wording, or where the wording isn't clear, to clarify it.
So the aftermath, the aftermath, like after you've actually went in and did your work, like what are some of the things that have happened in a positive way after you guys have went in and kind of forced these people to change?
Well, in the case of USDA, one thing that happened on the day that we published this rulemaking petition is they finally put up a website that described that, so that people could actually supposedly see what they were doing. But their report on what they'd done in the last 2 years, their annual report that extended a year and a half, consisted of 3 sentences.
I know, that was like the nutrition policy was like some canned paragraph that was just in some school district policy book everywhere. No school district actually sat down and thought about what is our nutrition policy for our school district when we were doing that work. And it's like no one actually gets to sit down and say, hey, maybe we could actually start to rethink what our agency is all about, because people are so afraid of change. It seems like I just see that all the time, that people are afraid of change, and they feel threatened.
It's a function of control. So it's top-down control. And sometimes there's sort of happy talk rhetoric about we want to encourage a diversity of viewpoints, or some of these policies talk about how they want to encourage a culture of dissent. But in the reality in these agencies is the opposite of a culture of dissent. It's really a culture of fear.
Yeah, I that's what I think, the fear thing. And then like there's so much loss involved in that. Like what kind of losses do you see when we're running our agencies in that way? I'm sure the losses extend, the ripple effect must go, all the way to consumers, of course. But even maybe
here's a way to think of it, because that's difficult to gauge. But so there are a lot of groups around the country that also that sue the federal government, and generally, in order to beat the federal government in environmental or public health matters, you have to show that the government was acting in an arbitrary and capricious fashion. In other words, that the government was acting irrationally. It's the highest burden in civil jurisprudence. The way these small groups, and they're all small compared to the federal government, the way they win is they're able to show that the agency is engaged usually in some form of scientific fraud along the lines that we're alleging. And it's the agency's own suppressed science that is ultimately used as the weapon that undoes them. And one of the things we're trying to accomplish is that we know of no instance in which a federal agency has been found by a district court judge to violate the federal law where the responsible manager has been punished. We've never even found one where there's given a letter of reprimand, or the fact that he made an illegal decision, and they're almost all he's, is even entered in their personnel
file. So no accountability whatsoever.
None whatsoever. It's almost reverse accountability, because unless there's a change, because they took the illegal action to further the agency agenda, and therefore they're promoted.
They're promoted. Good job.
And those are the people that occupy the upper echelons in many instances, and it sort of perpetuates, and they want to promote the people that will be like them. and trying to break that cycle is what we're trying to do.
Well, I've had a couple of people on my show that I'd like to kind of run by you. First of all, there was one group, the Family Farms Coalition. They're out of Oregon, Jackson County, Oregon, where they passed a law by over 60% saying that their little county, they didn't want any GMO crops grown there. And of course, Monsanto spent $1 million on commercials full of lies saying that they weren't going to have strawberries anymore and it was going to cost people money when it was, there was no dollars that were going to have to be spent. But they passed it even in a conservative place, but then they come back and now they're suing them for passing that law and they have to defend themselves. That's going on right now in this month, actually, the court case, they're going to court. And then there was another group that reminds me a lot of what you guys do. I'm thinking they were called Life. But there's like 11 groups that are suing the state of California because they decided that they can spray pesticides anywhere, anytime, without anyone's permission. There's that going on, and they're suing the state for passing that law. And then I did think it was good news I had here on my list of something that happened over in Washington where I'm not sure it's Willapa and Grays Harbor. They wanted to spray all these pesticides for this burrowing shrimp that harms the oysters, and so it's something that is not even approved for use in water. It's only approved for land, so it could have some really negative consequences from using it in water. But apparently, there's no standards for organic in water or even for using these pesticides. But anyway, there was like such an outrage for spraying these pesticides in the bay that they had to back down. This just happened within the past day. I've been kind of following this story. I wanted to see if the people would speak up or not. And I am just so thrilled that the people did speak up. They were outraged and they spoke up so much that they could not spray the pesticide. I'm just kind of like, woo-woo! I'm so, it's because of, the work of agencies like yours and all of these people around the country that have worked so hard to get out there and really exercise our rights as Americans.
And there are also some good people that are buried inside these agencies that in some instances are helping the environmental groups that are bringing these challenges. And when those inside employees get in trouble or put at risk, those groups call us. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I am just so grateful that...
We do Windows.
I'm just so grateful that they have someone like you to turn to. And yes, that's the thing, we look at some of these, even like the USDA, and I know that when someone that's been our guest over for several years now, Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America, when they went with Dr. Hansen, Michael Hansen from Consumers Union, to meet on the fact that they found their breast milk had 1,600 times the glyphosate level that is allowed in water in Europe, and to report that to them, it was very, very hard. They had to, this group, just like, I just thought they were awesome. They made like 5,000 calls to the USDA in like 5 days. And they were like, quit calling us. And they're like, we're not going to stop calling us until you give us an answer. And so they had to give him the meeting. But the impression that Zen got from the group that they presented to, and they had people talking about the allergies that were caused by the pesticides and all these horrible things that they had gone through and the science. And there were people there that she said you could tell that they wanted to do something.
Right. Well, and also you can imagine USDA is scared to death of the prospect that their own scientists are going to provide studies and other proof of bioaccumulation and other concerns that are going to be used by these groups to knock on their front door. So that's the last thing they want.
Are they afraid that they're going to be sued for allowing this stuff? Could someone do that to them? Or like, what are the repercussions of what they've done where they pretty much knowingly approved, and they've allowed it to keep being used, even though we've had mounting evidence.
Well, the pesticide approval process is with EPA, not USDA.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
And that's another story and maybe another interview, because we also work with scientists in EPA that are frustrated for a whole variety of reasons.
Different reasons.
Neonics, but things like aerial spraying and backyard misting systems and other.
Oh, I would love to talk about that.
Indiscriminate. And actually, our New England director is a former longtime EPA scientist and lawyer. And she would also be an excellent guest because she can speak not only about these issues, but also as somebody on the inside of these agencies who suffered direct career threats.
Well, I'm gonna get back to you, and all our listeners. We're definitely going to schedule this. If you would mind coming back and bringing your guests.
If we see a spike in underwear sales, we'll know where it came from.
Okay. We've definitely got to schedule that show, because that would be friggin' awesome. I would love to have her on the show as well and hear what she has to say. And I just want to thank you so much, Jeff, and I'm going to get it right this time. I want to thank you so much for your time today, Jeff, and taking, your evening even to call us and provide all this great information. And we're pretty much at the end of our show here, but this is going up as a podcast on the kcaaradio.com website under Smart Health Talk. You can listen to this podcast. I'm going to be putting it on our website as well, and be posting that on social media. But please feel free to go and download it. You can share it. This has, to me, been really great information. You're awesome, Jeff, and so is your entire team. Thank them so much for all the great work that they do, and I love your approach.
Thank you.
It's just what we need. It's really what we need. This is how we heal. This is how we get better. So great job. All right, everyone, please stay tuned. We got more to come. And, of course, you can find us, Smart Health Talk, all over social media and our website. And please join us again next Thursday right here on KCAA at 4 o'clock. All right, everyone, be smart shoppers and buy organic. Thanks. Bye.
Tom Busby, CNBC Radio. The FDA now says it's found records showing listeria contamination at Bluebell Ice Cream's Oklahoma plant as far back as 2013. Yet the company continued to ship products manufactured at that plant until a recall was ordered after several deaths in Kansas were linked to ice cream that was made there. On Wall Street today, stocks closed higher. The Dow up 82, the Nasdaq adding 26. Oil, though, fell $2 a barrel to $59. That sent shares of airlines soaring and shares of energy companies losing power. ExxonMobil, the biggest decliner today in the Dow. First-time jobless claims rose slightly higher last week, while a top outplacement firm said planned layoffs in April hit a 3-year high. That's because of the big slowdown in domestic oil production. And Americans increased their borrowing in March, especially on student loans, car loans,